Charge d'Affaires, Leila Moses Onesh from U.S. Embassy Belmopan. I'm happy to share this virtual dais with you. Good afternoon, Honorable Lisa Morris-Julian, Dr. Louis Zabaneh, Jamie Hoyt, Kiran Maharaj, and of course, good afternoon to all of the youth participants in the Fact Check program. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. On behalf of the U.S. Embassy in Port of Spain, in collaboration with the U.S. Embassy in Belmopan, and our implementing partner, Jamie Hoyt, I am delighted to welcome you all to the launch ceremony for Fact Check, an online curriculum aimed at enhancing media literacy in young adults. We live in a time in which media literacy is foundational to our democracies. Adults and youth alike are bombarded daily with images and information, and not all of it is true. There are very real consequences to propagating false information online. It incites violence against a vulnerable population. It harms public health efforts to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic. And most critically, it erodes trust and support in our public institutions, which are the foundations of democracy. Just days ago, we watched how the premeditated and unprovoked Russian invasion of Ukraine was preceded by a disinformation campaign that continues today. Disinformation is one of Russia's most important and far-reaching weapons. President Biden responded, "We countered Russia's lies with the truth. Truth is the only weapon to counter disinformation." Each and every one of us has a duty to defend truth, to counter lies with facts. We must all learn to critically evaluate and analyze the truth behind what we see on our screens. You were chosen to participate in this workshop because of your outstanding qualifications. I hope after this workshop, you will take what you have learned and educate the people in your different social networks and communities to be vigilant against the threat of false information. The U.S. Embassy in Port of Spain is committed to innovative programs like Fact Check that help participants think critically about the media they consume. After all, an informed public is the only way to combat the onerous threat disinformation poses to democracies. Thank you again to everyone for attending today's launch.
You said my name perfectly, so I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Dr. Louis Zabaneh, Deputy Minister Lisa Morris-Julian, Mrs. Marlene Cuellar, Ms. Jamie Hoyt, Ms. Kiran Maharaj, my dear colleague, Mr. Shante Moore, my wonderful public affairs team, thank you. And of course, a very warm welcome to all of the youth participants in this first ever Fact Check Media Literacy Program. We are so delighted to partner with U.S. Embassy Port of Spain and our implementing partners, SmartTerm and the Media Institute of the Caribbean, to launch this really innovative online curriculum created to help young people in both our countries hone their media literacy and critical thinking skills. And while this particular program is of 2 weeks duration, of course, you will be applying the lessons learned over the course of your lifetime. When I think about the conundrum of the information age, I am reminded of the famous line, "Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink," from Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Meaning, of course, you're surrounded by something, but it's not necessarily useful and you're not necessarily benefiting from it. And this is really the irony of the information age, isn't it? When we are just bombarded with this dizzying array of source material, striking us from every direction, and we don't know quite what to do with some of these sources sometimes, or how to evaluate the information. So ironically, this might be called the misinformation age. Of course, we've heard misinformation is false information, and disinformation is a bit more sinister because it's designed to deliberately mislead readers. But both are very damaging to democracies. Because when voters are not equipped with accurate, timely, and unbiased information, their ability to choose their government is compromised. When consumers don't have access to the facts about products, their choices are manipulated. When young people rely exclusively on a few media outlets that are curated by their social media apps, they're self-censoring and they enter an echo chamber where a healthy debate about things that inform policymaking are simply not happening. So there are many angles to consider when fact-checking, not just truthfulness, but comprehensiveness. So I'm sure we all agree that information literacy is now more important than ever. Rampant false information will weaken even most vibrant democratic societies. It will undermine trust in democratic institutions. And of course, we have seen this play out during the global COVID pandemic, how this widespread misinformation and sometimes even intentional disinformation has sown doubt and confusion that has made it even more difficult to confront a public health challenge that includes all of us. A deadly virus is a threat to all, as is disinformation and misinformation. Now, disinformation, as we heard from my colleague, Chargé Moore, is used by authoritarian regimes as a tool of manipulation. And the trajectory of history changed on February 24th when Russia violated international law by invading Ukraine. And prior to the invasion, as my colleague alluded to, we heard statements, chilling statements from Russian President Vladimir Putin distorting Ukrainian history to deny its very sovereign existence, to attempt to justify his unprovoked aggression and war against innocents. And as American University professor Pat Outfordine once said, media literacy is a basic tool for citizenship in an information society, informed citizenry. That reality is more true than ever in 2022. So we are really grateful for all of you participating in this important initiative that will help you in your path to becoming the next generation of leaders in Belize and in Trinidad and Tobago, leaders who know how to readily distinguish fact from fiction. Because we're all responsible for correcting the record, but you as future leaders, you are the custodians of truth, and you are the warriors of accuracy and integrity. So we hope that you will continue to share the skills that you learn in this course beyond these 2 weeks. And I want to also thank everybody on this Zoom call who made this really terrific program possible. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Minister of Education, Dr. the Honorable Leanne Gadsby-Dolly, and myself, we thank you sincerely for the invitation to represent the Ministry of Education, Trinidad and Tobago. And might I say a special thank you to our Charge d'Affaires, Mr. Moore, for these innovative ideas and the fact that he keeps getting our young people in Trinidad and Tobago involved and in the forefront. As Minister in the Ministry of Education, a former teacher, I am a parent, and I have a deep appreciation for programs and projects that focus on helping and empowering our young people to navigate this ever-evolving digital and information era. I commend the team at SmartCheck and their collaborators, inclusive of the U.S. Embassies of Port of Spain and Belize, for engaging in a program that would encourage and promote critical thinking, surrounded the validity and veracity of information and misinformation. The past 2 years have been a challenge for us all, and as adults, we have had an uphill battle, deciphering valid articles and claims, especially surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. The young people would have had an even greater challenge, wondering which way to turn for reliable and credible sources in their quest for trusted information. Some adults have added to their difficulty with their tendencies to share videos and articles with bold assurance without fact-checking, consequently contributing to the spread of misinformation. So many of us in Trinidad know those good morning WhatsApp messages from auntie, tanty, uncle, and nenen, where they would tell us all what the virus was about and the misinformation, sadly, about vaccination. It is necessary to note that even while our beloved and savvy Gen Zs can easily multitask in the use of technology and social media proficiency does not always correlate with digital literacy. And what do I mean by that? Recent studies in the US have shown when it came to evaluating information that flowed through social media and fake news channels, it was a challenge to differentiate the genuine from the disingenuous. Young people today, inclusive of toddlers, because yes, along with my teenagers, I in my old age also have a toddler, they can very easily navigate the logistics of technology. However, when it comes to critical, analytical, and emotional deciphering of what is put before them via the technology, it is indeed up to us to continuously assist them in navigating this difficult digital world. The digital world is no different from the real world, with the same negativity, the same positivity, and the same need to know how to communicate. It's not enough to assume because young people know how to use the tools that they will automatically know how best to use it and how to effectively gain from it. I quote, in recent years, the term fake news has become popular as a paradigm of mis and disinformation. This term tends to be put this phenomenon within the framework of media organizations. However, the problem is more complex because it also involves other entities dedicated to deliberately producing and spreading falsehoods, as well as social networks and large internet platforms that work as global carriers of such misleading content. One must only look across to Europe and what is currently taking place in that landscape to understand what I mean by that. With the growing availability of devices, data, Wi-Fi, increased ease of access to multiple social media platforms, and the ability to go viral, they have caused many so-called overnight experts to pop up, many of whom promote their own opinions and agendas, some creating outright falsehoods, many times designed to inflame, to anger, enrage, to boost not just passions, but prejudices. With all the foregoing points in mind, I note and endorse the goals of this Fact Check initiative, which are to provide a curriculum educating on fake news and disinformation of citizens for youths between the ages of 15 and 25, because these young people will teach the older ones, and they will also teach their siblings what is the best way to decipher what is true. Within Belize and Trinidad and Tobago, we need this generation to lead the way forward, to educate on the social and economic impact of disseminating fake news, to nurture an informed public that utilizes fair judgment, critical thinking, and promotes fact-checking that disrupts online falsehood and decreases the spread of fake news. These goals are both relevant and needed to ensure that the program equips the participants with the right mindset and tools to navigate information and communication. Education is multidimensional and dynamic. Everyone has a part to play. No role is too unimportant. There's no role too small. The government cannot do it alone. The US government cannot do it alone. Therefore, we welcome and encourage valuable players, private sector agencies, nonprofit organizations, and other agencies to engage in activities and initiatives that contribute to an education system to become one of learning, growth, and support that helps and inspire our young people to believe and achieve their dreams. To the young people that are participating here today, I remind you that learning is a lifelong process. It comes in both formal and informal settings. You'll be presented with many learning opportunities like this along your life's journey. Absorb all what you can from this program. Do not be afraid to ask questions, and of course, enjoy the process. We are in the fastest evolving era of all time, and your generation, more than any other, is charged with an even greater responsibility to keep up. Because you are not just our future leaders, you're also our current leaders who will take us to the next level with your ingenuity. I ask you to remember a quote by Zig Ziglar. If you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. If you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. Thank you very much.
Numerous is with great pleasure that I welcome and congratulate all of you young participants from Belize and Trinidad and Tobago to this timely and important two-week education opportunity. I do so on behalf of the Belize Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Technology, and express my thanks to the embassies of the United States in Belize and Trinidad and Tobago for this honor. The fact-check program, Critical Thinking Journalism for Youths, cannot come at a better time when our entire world is engulfed in the suffocating smoke of misinformation and fake news. You, our precious young people, will be better prepared after this course to detect, clean and clear the air of this rancid and poisonous cloud of lies and misdirection. The future survival of our democratic way of life, where freedom and prosperity are founded on the truth, depends on our abilities to resoundingly defeat the forces of anti-truth with superior critical thinking skills and a passion for integrity of character and accuracy of communication. We experience today in both traditional and social media numerous instances of confusion over what is true and what is false. This is especially the case in the amorphous social media realm, where quote-unquote experts abound in every imaginable field and area of interest. It is one thing for someone to mistakenly state or report something that is not accurate and then make a correction, and another to purposefully mislead an audience with knowingly false information with malicious intent. One example is a phenomenon called deepfake, where a computer algorithm is used to insert the face or body of a person upon that of another in a video that is used to propagate devious misinformation to damage the innocent person's character and/or mislead numerous viewers to believe a false message. This training will develop your competency and skills in the areas of journalism, media literacy, and critical thinking to help us win the battles against anti-truth. Wherever your path leads in life, you will need these valuable assets that will build and preserve your virtuous principles of honesty and integrity. Ultimately, our future will be defined by your character. Our social, economic, environmental, and institutional sustainability depends significantly on your ability to uphold truth and shame the deceivers. We have faith that you will be able to do so, especially after investing your time and effort studiously into this course. Enjoy your learning and know that the payoff for you, your families, and society will be tremendous. Thank you.
Let me start off by saying good afternoon to the Chargé d'Affaires Leila Moses Onesh from the U.S. Embassy in Belize, the Chargé d'Affaires Shante Moore of the U.S. Embassy in Trinidad and Tobago, Honorable Dr. Louis Zabané, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science and Technology in Belize, Honorable Lisa Morris-Julian, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Shamir Sadler, the founder and CEO of SmartTerm, Ms. Jamie Hoyt, the Director of SmartTerm Limited, Ms. Kiran Maharaj, the President of the Media Institute of the Caribbean and also an implementing partner, to all the Fact Check participants and other invited guests. Pleasant good afternoon from Belize. It is such a pleasure to be joining all of you at this event. Interestingly, I spent most of last week at the CARICOM Intersessional meeting in Belize, where one of the predominant themes was the strength we in the Caribbean have in our unity through regional integration and collaboration. And here we are, Belizeans and Trinbagonians, bookends of the Caribbean Sea, united for the noblest of causes, equipping our youths with the tools to filter misinformation and disinformation. And I appreciate the previous speakers distinguishing between the two and not just use the blanket term fake news, which I have found in my industry to be a term generally used for false news and for truths we don't like. But let me speak to the guests of honor today. And that's the group of participants, to our young people here. Let me start off by saying thank you for taking the time and interest to apply for these sessions. I know for sure that all of you are early birds because the organizers told us that the program was filled before the deadline. You are our hope, or volunteer frontline defenders. And I hope that the sessions in the coming days meet your expectations and strengthen your resolve in pursuing truth. Media literacy has become a foundational skill for today's generation. Globally, online content consumption is estimated to be 6 to 7 hours daily. And don't worry, I won't ask you to share your screen time analytics, but just imagine during this time that we engage in front of our screens, we're bombarded by articles, videos, infographics, and even memes telling us stories and trying to capture our attention. Some of us try to exercise control and step away from the computer and put down the phone, but then get notified on our watches. That is how hyper-connected we are. And if we're to be honest, impatient as well to get information. But this information overload can pose a significant threat. Let's use the example of Googling. One Google search and we have instant access to millions of results. And the best and worst part is you can find exactly what it is you're looking for. We saw this in the pandemic as people searched for reasons to get vaccinated and reasons not to get vaccinated. And let's look at something less consequential. If you look for health benefits of milk versus side effects of milk, you enter a minefield of information, and depending on what you search for, you can find the validation you needed to reinforce pre-existing biases and beliefs. Now, when you add modern technology and algorithms that advise our digital networks to connect us with like-minded people. Now, this isn't always bad. This is an opportunity sometimes for you to expand your network if you're a sports lover or fashionista, an advocate like yourselves. But the harm comes when you're connected with people who validate your belief in misinformation. This is why distinguishing the facts from biased and purposefully misleading sources is as urgent as it is important. As for fake news, it's not as easy as we're often told, think before you click. Studies show that people are more susceptible to fake news in video format than text forms of the same story. It is the human instinct to believe what we see. But in this era where photo and video apps are built into our mobile devices, and artificial intelligence makes the creation of deepfakes so real, they're almost indistinguishable from reality, that so many fall victims and share with friends and families and social networks. But even if unintentional, there are real world consequences to the spread of false information. We are already witnessing the undermining of trust in science, in the independent and established media. We see the inciting of violence, the threatening of democratic systems, and the creation of platforms for harmful conspiracy theories and hate speech. Daily, we are all exposed to misinformation, and that makes us all vulnerable to the risks of fake news. But we can and must challenge and counter its flow. Learning smart media consumption can help us navigate information overload. And we need not look further than to the foundational teachings from our school days: critical thinking. Programs like these provide our youth, you, the next generation of our leaders and truth seekers, with the tools to distinguish fact from opinions and genuine information from lies. In this era of misinformation and disinformation, media literacy is now a survival skill for 21st century living. Today, through the start of this project, we start to lay the foundation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Protocols have been observed. We'd like to thank the U.S. Embassy of Trinidad and Tobago and Belmopan for including us in this innovative program, Fact Check Critical Journalism for Youth. Our platform will allow the participants to learn in a self-paced and live environment, bridging the gaps across the region in 2 different countries. We're seeing challenging times in education, and the pandemic have proven that the time to digitize and enhance the way we educate is right now. Smart Term has been pushing this digitization effort since 2016, and we currently work across the region with multiple islands. Our focus is involving all stakeholders as a part of the mission, as we empower schools and teachers to create the best learning environments. We want to provide many features to help increase student learning outcome across the board, and we want to help them build 21st century skills. For example, this fact check program. All the data gathered are then aggregated and provided to the Ministry of Education so that they can help make data-driven decisions to help improve education. Our formal school education system and an environment for learning 21st century skills, upskilling in trade, are all important to the development and the way forward for our region and our countries. And we commit our efforts and resources to Trinidad and Tobago and Belize to help with the digitization of the education infrastructure and content to enable our youth to be globally competitive. This program is only the start of what we can do to educate against disinformation and misinformation. But through upskilling, we can teach our youth to write programs, we teach them to create solutions, and to automate the fight against disinformation and misinformation. The opportunities this program presents are endless, and we look forward to the impact of this project and what it will do for our region. And as we commit to the education across the region and upskilling our youth, we'll see a lot more programs like this, a lot more solutions born. And like I said, we're looking forward to the impact it will have and the growth of our region. Thank you.
Everyone can see my screen. Let me also say Happy International Women's Day to all of the women here. And I want to say thank you to all of the men who are on this journey supporting us along the way. So, why news literacy matters is going to be the first session. Why does it matter? This is an area that the Media Institute of the Caribbean has been working very hard on since the year 2015. And we have seen the negative impact of false information and how it affects us, not just from a society perspective, but also as individuals. But why does it matter? And the mere fact that we're talking about critical thinking for journalists means that we realize that the time has come when we have to place a larger responsibility and unfortunately a burden for us to try to ensure that truth is what is being circulated and not fake information. The power of information really means that we are empowering people, and that is going to be lesson 2. So it is not just a matter of knowing the truth, is what do we do with it when we have it? How do we circulate it? How do we make it matter? How do we do something positive for the societies in which we live? And our societies now are not just Trinidad and Tobago and Belize. We live in a global society. It is boundaryless. And just as there are dangers with the internet, we have to try to also use the internet to our advantage. So the power of information and what we do with it. And then we move into the definition and variations of fake news. And we will have a speaker from Canada with us for that session, lesson 3. Is it true? How do we verify the news? To me, WhatsApp is one of those new platforms that I think does more danger than anything else, especially when you realize that it is very thrilling for our older age groups who have such a thing as WhatsApp, and they tend to spread that information in all forms and they don't check it. So how do we know? How do we check it? How do we understand where it came from? And what do we as individuals do to dispel it and to set the record straight? And then we have what makes news different in lesson 6. What makes a difference? A talk show's news? I can tell you my opinion of that, but we may need another half a day just to get that done. But what makes news different? And we have to be able to decipher what has entertainment value and what has real news value, and what it is that we want to emanate for ourselves and for the places we live in. Who decides what's newsworthy? News started off being one way. The media house, the newsroom, they generated the information, and then that would be filtered down to the audiences, to the population. We don't have that anymore. News now has become a discussion. The audience participates in the news. So then what happens and who really decides what is newsworthy? And we have a lot of information, a lot of feedback that comes now through the social media platforms. And what do we do to funnel that? Lesson 8, fairness and balance. Is it fair? Is it biased? Do we need fairness and balance if we're in a plural society? I guess that is one of the things that will come into the discussion in lesson 8. And then we go to lesson 9, critical thinking. It is so important that critical thinking be developed, not just in our newsrooms, not just with our tertiary level institutions, but more and more you realize that at secondary school level, critical thinking skills become valuable. There was a time when critical thinking was actually part of what you would have as Form 6 in secondary schools. And I noticed that it's now off of our syllabus. And I think that that's something that they should probably reinstate, because what it causes you to do is to ask the right kinds of questions for everything you come across. Lesson 10, identifying and dealing with fake news. So you learn how to verify. Now you're going to be able to quickly identify it, but then what do you do when you identify it? And that will be covered in lesson 10. And of course, the information cycle of fake news. If you want to understand how it got out there, how it became so prevalent, then I think it's very important that we understand the information cycle to know at what point we arrest the information and we lead by example to do something about it.